The price of forever. 3,000 years is enough time to watch civilizations crumble into dust, enough time to see mountains worn down to hills, rivers change their courses, and entire species vanish as if they never existed. Kaelith had witnessed it all. He'd walked among the ancient Sumerians, debated philosophy with forgotten Greek scholars, and watched the Great Wall of China being built, stone by stone. But none of that compared to the unbearable weight of watching the people he loved grow old and die. Again and again and again. The first time, her name was Ashara. She'd been a weaver in Babylon, her fingers nimble and quick, her laugh like water over stones. He'd loved her for 43 years before age took her. The second time, he stopped counting after the seventh. Each loss carved something away from him, until he feared there'd be nothing left but the hollow shell of immortality. So Kaelith made a decision: no more. He would walk the earth alone, untouched by the brief burning candles of human lives. That resolution lasted 2,874 years. Then he met Emma Chen on a rainy Thursday in Seattle, and everything he'd carefully constructed came crashing down. The emergency room at Harborview Medical Center smelled like disinfectant and desperation. Kaelith shouldn't have been there. He didn't get sick, didn't need doctors, and generally avoided hospitals with their fluorescent lights and their harsh reminders of human fragility. But his assistant had collapsed during a business meeting, and Kaelith, despite his better judgment, had accompanied the ambulance. He was standing in the hallway, checking his phone, when the crash team rushed past. 37-year-old male, cardiac arrest, unresponsive. The gurney slammed through the doors, organized chaos erupted, and in the center of it all, calling orders with calm precision, was a woman with dark hair pulled back in a hasty ponytail, scrubs wrinkled from a long shift, and the most intensely alive eyes Kaelith had seen in centuries. Charge to 200. Clear. The patient's body convulsed, the monitor beeped erratically, then steadied into a rhythm. "We've got him," she said, and her whole team seemed to exhale as one. Kaelith watched her work for another 20 minutes, mesmerized by himself. She moved like water, flowing from one crisis to the next, her hands gentle when they needed to be, firm when circumstances demanded it. She joked with a terrified child getting stitches. She held the hand of an elderly woman waiting for test results. She drank coffee that had gone cold hours ago and didn't seem to notice. He should have left. He meant to leave. Instead, he found himself still there at 2 a.m. when she finally emerged from the staff room, exhaustion written in every line of her body. "You're still here." She noticed him, surprisingly. Most people didn't, not really. He'd perfected the art of being unremarkable. "Your friend, David, right? He's stable. You can see him tomorrow during visiting hours." "Thank you, Dr. Chen, but I'm not a doctor yet. Finishing my residency." She rolled her shoulders, wincing. 5 more months and I'll finally be able to put those letters after my name." "You saved that man's life tonight." "That's the job." She smiled, and Kaelith felt something in his chest, something he'd thought long dead, flicker weakly back to life. She believed that. He could see it in her face. After what must have been a 16-hour shift, after the stress and the blood and the inevitable losses that came with emergency medicine, she still believed in miracles. Kaelith had stopped believing in miracles around the fall of Rome. "Can I buy you breakfast?" The words escaped before he could stop them. "You look like you could use something better than hospital coffee." Emma hesitated, studying him with those disconcerting eyes. Then she glanced at her watch and laughed. "You know what? Why not? There's a diner 2 blocks away that makes terrible pancakes and excellent hash browns. Fair warning, though, I'm probably going to fall asleep in my eggs." She didn't. They talked until sunrise painted the Seattle skyline in shades of gold and pink. She told him about growing up in San Francisco, about her brother James, who was an oncologist in Boston, and about the gap years she'd spent volunteering in rural Guatemala, where she'd delivered babies by candlelight and fallen in love with medicine.
"What about you?" she asked, drowning her hash browns in hot sauce. "What do you do besides lurk in hospital hallways at 2 a.m.? "I'm in acquisitions. Art, antiques, rare books. Sounds fascinating." "It can be. Mostly it means I spend a lot of time in dusty storage rooms and auction houses, looking for things people have forgotten they own." "Things people have forgotten?" She tilted her head. "That's kind of sad, don't you think? That something valuable can just be overlooked? Lost?" Kaelith thought about empires he'd watched crumble, languages he'd heard spoken for the last time, lovers whose names he could barely remember. "Yes," he said, quietly. "It is." Emma's phone buzzed. She checked it and sighed. "My brother. He wants to video chat before his shift starts." She stood, leaving cash on the table despite Kaelith's protests. This was nice. Unexpected, but nice. "Could we do it again?" She paused, considering. "I work Wednesday through Sunday, 12-hour shifts. I'm free Monday and Tuesday. Tuesday, dinner. Somewhere that serves better pancakes." "It's a date." She smiled, then corrected herself quickly. "I mean, not a date, just food. With another human. In a restaurant." Kaelith watched her leave, sunlight catching in her hair. He sat alone in the diner as morning traffic began to build outside and made a decision that terrified him. He would let himself care. Just this once. Just a little. What harm could it do? The harm, as it turned out, was considerable. Over the next 3 months, Kaelith fell in love with Emma Chen with a completeness that shocked him. He'd thought himself beyond such things, his heart too scarred and ancient for new wounds. He'd been catastrophically wrong. Emma loved with her whole being. She threw herself into everything, her work, her friendships, her growing feelings for this mysterious art dealer who seemed to know impossible things about history and never quite explained where his wealth came from. They went to the Seattle Art Museum, where Kaelith carefully didn't mention that he'd met several of the artists personally. They walked through Pike Place Market in the rain. They spent a Sunday afternoon at the Children's Hospital where Emma volunteered, and Kaelith watched her read stories to kids with cancer, her voice bringing dragons and princesses to life. "I want 3, she said later, as they shared pad thai in her tiny apartment. "Kids, I mean. James thinks I'm crazy. He says doctors barely have time for plants, let alone children. But I've always known. 3 seems right. Chaotic, but right." Kaelith's throat tightened. "You will be an extraordinary mother." "You think so?" She looked genuinely pleased. "James says I'm too impulsive, that I should focus on my career first." "Your brother sounds practical." "My brother is terrified of anything he can't control, which is basically everything. Important." She set down her chopsticks. "What about you? Do you want kids?" The question was innocent. She didn't know she was driving a blade into his chest. "I can't. Medical condition." It wasn't entirely a lie. His species could reproduce, but not with humans. The biological incompatibility was absolute. "Oh." Emma's hand found his. "I'm sorry. That must be difficult." "It is what it is." He forced a smile. "Tell me more about these 3 hypothetical children of yours." She did. She painted pictures with her words. A daughter who'd be stubborn and brilliant like James, a son who'd probably give her gray hair by age 5, another daughter who'd be gentle and kind. She talked about birthday parties and scraped knees and teaching them to ride bikes. She made him see a future so vivid it hurt. A future she could have, just not with him. Not unless he offered her the choice. Kaelith stood on the balcony of his penthouse apartment, watching the city lights blur through rain-streaked glass. Behind him, in the living room, sat Oren, another immortal, another exile from their dying world. You're thinking about telling her. Oren's voice carried no judgment, only weary understanding. I can't keep pretending. It's been 4 months. She's talking about introducing me to her brother. And if you tell her the truth, if you offer her the choice, Oren moved to stand beside him. Have you thought about what you're really asking? 1,000 years. Safety from disease, from aging. We could have time. We both know the price, Kaelith. Oren's reflection in the glass looked older than it should, worn down by millennia. Sterility, the gradual fading of emotions. Eventually, she'll become like us, going through the motions of existence without really feeling them. Is that love, or is it selfishness? Kaelith's hands clenched on the railing. What's the alternative? Watch her grow old? Watch her die in 40 or 50 years while I stay exactly as I am? Yes, that's exactly the alternative. Let her have her normal, beautiful, brief human life. Let her have those 3 children. Let her feel everything deeply until the very end. And you survive it, as you've survived before. I don't want to survive it. Not again. Then maybe you shouldn't have fallen in love. They stood in silence, watching the rain. There's someone you should meet before you make any decisions. Her name is Zara. The woman sitting in the cafe looked about 40, elegant and composed, with silver threading through her dark hair. She ordered black coffee and nothing else. When she smiled at Kaelith, the expression didn't reach her eyes. So, you're thinking about offering the gift. Zara's voice was cultured, empty. Oren told me he thought I might provide perspective. How long has it been for you? 832 years. Marcus offered me forever when I was 31. I was dying of tuberculosis. He saved my life. I thought I was getting a miracle. You sound like you regret it. Regret? Zara considered the word. That would require feeling something strongly enough to regret it. I don't anymore. I remember loving Marcus. I remember the texture of that emotion, the way it felt, but it's like remembering a word in a language I no longer speak. Kaelith's blood ran cold. When did it fade? Gradually. First 100 years, I still felt everything. By year 300, emotions were muted. By 500, they were mostly theoretical. Now, I shrug. I go through the appropriate motions. I smile when something is supposed to be funny. I say the right things. But inside, nothing much. It's very peaceful, actually. That's horrifying. Is it? Zara tilted her head, bird-like. I don't suffer anymore. I don't grieve. I don't rage or despair. I simply exist. Some might call that enlightenment. Some might call it death. We're all dead, Kaelith. We just don't have the courtesy to lie down. She stood, leaving her coffee untouched. Your Emma, does she want a peaceful existence stretching into infinity, or does she want to burn bright and brief, feeling everything? Because she can't have both. Neither could I. Neither can you. After Zara left, Kaelith sat alone for a long time, her words echoing in his head. Emma knew something was wrong. She'd always been perceptive. It was what made her a good doctor. Over the next few weeks, she watched Kaelith withdraw, saw the shadows gathering in his eyes. Talk to me, she said one evening in her apartment. They'd cooked dinner together, or rather, she'd cooked while he'd chopped vegetables with the precise, practiced movements of someone who'd been doing it for centuries. Kaelith set down the knife. His hands were shaking. There's something I need to tell you, something impossible. And after I tell you, you'll either think I'm insane or you'll wish you'd never met me. Try me. I'm pretty hard to shock. So he told her everything. What he was, where he came from, how long he lived. He told her about Ashara and the others, about the burden of memory,
about watching everyone he'd ever loved crumble into dust while he remained unchanged. Emma listened, her expression unreadable. When he finished, she was quiet for a long moment. "Prove it," she said finally. Kaelith picked up the knife he'd been using. Before she could stop him, he drew it across his palm, a deep cut that should have required stitches. Emma gasped, reaching for him, but the wound was already closing. Within seconds, there was nothing but smooth, unmarked skin. "Oh my God!" She sank into a chair. "Oh my God! You're serious? You're actually... How is this possible?" "Advanced biology? My species evolved differently. We traded fertility and emotional resilience for longevity." "Fertility?" Emma's voice was faint. "You said you couldn't have children. You meant..." "I meant I can't. Ever. My species and humans are incompatible." She processed this, her mind visibly working through the implications. "But you said your people can reproduce." "With each other. There are 43 of us left. Our world is dying. Most of us scattered across the universe, trying to forget what we lost." Emma stood, pacing. "This is insane. This is absolutely insane. I'm a doctor. I believe in science, in evidence, in..." She stopped. "Show me again." He did. He answered her questions for hours, about his biology, his history, his world. She was fascinated and terrified in equal measure, her scientific mind warring with the impossible realities sitting in her living room. Finally, as dawn approached, she asked the question he'd been dreading. "Can you share it, this immortality?" "Yes." "How?" Kaelith pulled a small vial from his pocket. The liquid inside glowed faintly, blue as deep ocean water. "It's a genetic catalyst. It would rewrite your DNA over the course of a few weeks. You'd stop aging. Disease couldn't touch you. You'd have 1,000 years, maybe more." Emma stared at the vial like it was a snake. "What's the catch?" "Two things. First, you'd never have children. The process ensures sterility." Her face went white. "And second, emotions fade. Gradually, over centuries, you'd lose the ability to feel things deeply. Love, joy, grief, they'd all become distant memories. You'd exist, but you wouldn't truly live." Emma sat down heavily. "So the price of forever is everything that makes life worth living?" "Yes." They sat in silence as the sun rose over Seattle, painting the sky in shades of blood and gold. Emma threw herself into research. She called in favors, accessed medical databases, consulted with colleagues under the guise of a hypothetical case study. She met with Oren, interrogated him about the science behind the transformation. She even met with Zara, and came back from that encounter pale and shaken. "She's like a beautiful shell. Everything human has been scraped out of her." "I know. Is that what would happen to me?" "Eventually. It takes centuries, but yes." Emma pressed her hands to her face. "I keep trying to imagine it. Living for 1,000 years. Seeing the future. Never getting sick. Never growing old. It sounds like a dream." "Dreams can be nightmares in disguise." "But we'd have time. So much time. We could travel everywhere, see everything. We could..." She stopped. "We could watch everyone we know die. My brother, my friends. Every patient I save would be a temporary victory. Everything would be temporary except us." "Yes. And I'd never hold my own child, never feel them move inside me, never see what they look like, who they'd become." Tears streamed down her face. "How can you ask me to choose between you and them? Between everything I've wanted and everything I'm starting to want? I'm not asking you to choose. I'm giving you the option. The choice is yours, Emma. It's always been yours." She cried in his arms until exhaustion claimed her. Kaelith held her, memorizing the warmth of her body, the sound of her breathing, knowing that whatever she decided, he was going to lose her. Either quickly, to mortality, or slowly, to the hollow emptiness that came with forever. 2 weeks later, Emma came home from a routine checkup with her own doctor, looking like she'd seen a ghost. "What's wrong?" Kaelith stood immediately, ancient instincts screaming danger. Emma sat down, her hands trembling. "I'm pregnant." The world stopped. "That's impossible. We've been careful. You're on birth control." "I know, but apparently I'm one of the 0.3% for whom it fails. I'm 8 weeks along." She looked up at him, her eyes wide with a mixture of terror and wonder. "Kaelith, I'm pregnant." He couldn't breathe. "What are you going to do?" "I don't know. I mean, I'm 32. I'm almost done with my residency. I've always wanted children, but not like this. Not now. Not..." She stopped. "Not without knowing if there's a future with you." "Emma," she held up a hand, "don't. I need to think. I need to figure out what I want, because if I take your offer, this baby doesn't exist. I'd have to terminate the pregnancy before the transformation. The catalyst would kill a developing fetus." The cruelty of it was almost beautiful in its completeness. The universe had handed Emma her dream, a child. The future she'd always imagined, and poisoned it with impossible timing. "I can't tell you what to do," Kaelith said quietly. "I know. That's what makes it so hard." James Chen arrived in Seattle 3 days later, summoned by his sister's cryptic phone call. Kaelith met him in a downtown hotel bar, knowing this conversation was inevitable. "So you're the guy." James was built like a boxer, with his sister's sharp eyes and none of her gentleness. "Emma won't tell me what's going on, but I know it involves you, and I know she's pregnant, scared, and acting like someone offered her a deal with the devil." That's not entirely inaccurate. "Excuse me?" Kaelith took a long drink of whiskey that he couldn't get drunk on. "Your sister is facing an impossible choice. I can't make it for her. Neither can you." "Try me." "I'm offering her a life with me. A very, very long life. But the price is children. She can have this baby, raise it, have the family she's always wanted, or she can have me. She can't have both." James stared at him. "Are you serious? You're giving her an ultimatum? You or the baby?" "I'm not giving her anything except a choice. I've been honest about what I can and cannot offer. The timing is unfortunate, but she deserves to know all her options. Her option is obvious. She keeps the baby. She raises it. She builds the life she's dreamed about. And you..." He leaned forward. "You walk away. If you actually love her, that's what you do. You don't make her choose between motherhood and whatever the hell you're offering. I'm offering her forever. Forever is a long time to regret giving up your child." James left cash on the bar and walked out. Kaelith sat alone, his brother's words ringing in his ears, and knew he was right. Emma's apartment was dark when Kaelith arrived. She sat on the couch, one hand resting on her still flat stomach, staring at nothing. "I've been thinking about names," she said without preamble. "Maybe Sophie, if it's a boy. Maybe Daniel. My grandfather's name was Daniel." Kaelith sat beside her. "Those are beautiful names." "I went to the ultrasound this morning. There's a heartbeat. It's the size of a raspberry. In 7 months, I'll have a person, a whole person who doesn't exist yet, but will. who'll have thoughts and feelings and dreams, who might have my eyes or my brother's stubborn streak or absolutely nothing like either of us. Emma, I keep trying to imagine choosing the vial, taking your offer, having forever with you, and every time I see myself 30 years from now, hollow like Zara, trying to remember what it felt like to hold my child, except there is no child. There's just empty centuries stretching ahead. Tears tracked down her face, silent and terrible.
Then I imagined choosing differently, keeping the baby, raising them, growing old, dying at 80 or 90 if I'm lucky, and I see you at my funeral, unchanged, moving on to the next temporary person who catches your eye. And that hurts too. Everything hurts. Kaelith took her hand. I'm going to make this easier for you. How? I'm leaving Seattle. Tonight. I'll disappear completely. You'll never see me again. Emma's head snapped up. What? No, that's not... You can't just... You need to choose without me in the equation. If I stay, you'll keep trying to find a way to have both. There isn't one. So I'm removing myself as an option. He stood, his chest aching. Have your baby, Emma. Have all 3 of them. Marry someone who can give you the life you've always wanted. Be happy. Don't I get a say in this? You do, and that's why I'm leaving. Because if I stay, I'll hope, I'll wait. I'll make it harder for you to choose what your heart already knows is right. He cupped her face, memorizing every detail. I love you enough to let you go. That has to be enough. He kissed her forehead and walked to the door. Kaelith, her voice stopped him. If I asked you to stay, if I chose you and the vial and forever, would you let me? He turned back. Emma stood in the middle of her living room, one hand on her stomach, tears streaming down her face, and he saw the future splitting before her like a forked road. Would you? She asked again. Kaelith thought about Zara's empty eyes, about 800 years of going through the motions, about Emma 40, 50, 100 years from now, trying to remember what love felt like and finding only echoes. No, he said quietly. I wouldn't, because I love you too much to watch you become a ghost. He left before she could respond, before he could change his mind, before the 3,000-year-old resolve could crumble completely. 6 months later, Oren found Kaelith in Kyoto, teaching art history at a university under a false name. Emma had the baby, a girl, Sophie Chen, 7 pounds, 4 ounces. Healthy. Kaelith's hands stilled on the manuscript he'd been examining. Is Emma? She's fine. Residency completed, taking a job at Seattle Children's Hospital. Her brother moved back from Boston to help with the baby. He paused. She asked me to give you something. He held out an envelope. Inside was a photo. Emma in a hospital bed, exhausted and radiant, holding a tiny, wrinkled infant with a shock of dark hair. On the back, in Emma's handwriting, "Thank you for loving me enough to leave. Sophie has your eyes, or what I imagine yours might look like if you could smile the way you did in the beginning. She's perfect. Everything is perfect. I hope you find peace, Kaelith. You deserve it more than anyone I've ever known. Maybe in another lifetime, the math would work out differently. E." Kaelith stared at the photo for a long time. At Emma's smile, at the baby who would grow up never knowing him, at the life he'd chosen to walk away from. Does it get easier after the 1,000th time?
The 10,000th time? Oren sat beside him, ancient and weary. No. But that's how you know you're still human, even if biology says otherwise. The day it stops hurting is the day Zara wins. The day we all do. They sat together in comfortable silence, two immortals contemplating the unbearable weight of forever, while in Seattle, Emma Chen rocked her daughter to sleep and dreamed of a man who loved her enough to become a memory. 27 years later, Kaelith returned to Seattle for an art exhibition. He told himself it was coincidence, that the timing meant nothing, that he wasn't hoping for a glimpse of the life he'd surrendered. He was lying to himself, of course. 3,000 years, and he still hadn't mastered that particular skill.
The hospital corridor was different, but the same. Fluorescent lights, the smell of antiseptic, the organized chaos of saving lives. He walked slowly, uncertain what he was looking for, until he heard a familiar voice. "Dr. Chen, your 4 o'clock is here. The conference room is ready." Kaelith's heart, his allegedly immortal, allegedly resilient heart, stuttered. She stood at the nurse's station, older now, her hair touched with gray, laugh lines around her eyes, still beautiful, still alive with that fierce, burning intensity that had drawn him like a moth to flame. Dr. Emma Chen, attending physician, alive and aging and absolutely radiant. As he watched, a young woman approached her, mid-20s, with Emma's smile and his eyes, or what he imagined his eyes might look like if he'd been human. "Mom, I'm heading out. Tell Danny I'll meet him at the restaurant." "Drive safe, Sophie, and text your brother that he better not be late again." Sophie laughed and hugged her mother, and Kaelith saw it. 3 generations of life, of choices, of the messy, beautiful, temporary miracle of existence. Emma glanced up, seemingly at random, and their eyes met across the corridor. She knew him immediately. He saw the recognition flash across her face, followed by surprise, then something softer. She smiled, not the sad, wistful smile of regret, but something warmer, grateful. She mouthed 2 words, "Thank you." Then she turned back to her work, back to her patients, back to her life that was hers and hers alone. Kaelith walked out of the hospital into the Seattle rain. In his pocket, the vial of blue liquid had long since been destroyed. In his chest, the ache was familiar, bearable. He would carry this for another 1,000 years, another 10,000, and perhaps that was the real price of forever. Not the fading of emotions, but the burden of memory. The weight of every choice, every sacrifice, every love that burned bright and brief like a matchstick in the dark. Emma had chosen mortality, motherhood, the chaotic, painful, transcendent experience of being fully, completely human. And he would choose to remember, to feel it all, to carry the weight, to let it hurt. Because that was love. Not the promise of forever, but the willingness to survive the inevitable end. Kaelith walked into the rain, ancient and alone, and somehow, improbably, at peace. Behind him, in the warm light of the hospital, Emma Chen laughed at something a colleague said. Her daughter texted her brother, and life, brief, precious, irreplaceable life, continued its beautiful, temporary dance. The price of forever, Kaelith understood at last, was everything worth living for. The gift of mortality was getting to feel it all before it ended.